At Crestwood Academy, the air buzzed with quiet arrogance as the elite students gathered in the grand auditorium. Among them stood Maya Bennett, a scholarship student whose worn jacket and second-hand shoes marked her as an outsider. From across the room, Brandon Collins' mocking voice cut through the murmurs. "Let's see what the scholarship kid can do." His friends chuckled, their phones already raised to capture the inevitable embarrassment. The microphone sailed toward Maya like a weapon, cold and unforgiving in her hand as she caught it. The polished marble floors beneath her squeaked with each hesitant step as the spotlight found her, turning whispers into pointed stares. The pristine uniforms and designer accessories of the Crestwood students contrasted sharply with Maya's faded attire, reinforcing the invisible walls that separated her from them. Despite the jeers and snickers, Maya's heart pounded fiercely, steadying her resolve. She felt every ounce of judgment, every ounce of dismissal, a silent reminder that here, in this bastion of privilege, she was seen not as a peer, but as a charity case. But beneath the surface of scorn and prejudice, a quiet fire ignited. The same hands that held the microphone so awkwardly were the hands that had carried her through long nights of the blush, struggle and sacrifice. And as the auditorium fell silent, waiting for her to falter, Maya prepared to show them exactly who she was, not just the girl from the other side of town, but a voice that refused to be ignored. Outside the polished halls of Crestwood Academy, Maya Bennett's world was starkly different, quiet, cramped, and heavy with worry. She shared a small, aging apartment with her grandmother, Evelyn, whose frail body had been worn down by years of hard work and the slow creep of illness. Each morning, before the city stirred, Maya was already awake, carefully organizing Evelyn's medications into plastic containers, her hands steady despite the exhaustion pressing on her every muscle. The scent of stale upholstery mixed with the faint aroma of antiseptic filled the cramped kitchen where they shared their simple breakfasts, often just toast and a cup of weak tea. Evelyn's trembling hands betrayed the struggle beneath her gentle smile, a reminder of the sacrifices she'd made to keep Maya in school, far from the serry dangers of their old neighborhood. But the apartment, once a sanctuary, had become a ticking clock Maya couldn't ignore. The landlord had handed down an eviction notice, signaling the start of a redevelopment project that promised luxury condos where their humble home stood. 45 days remained before they would have to leave. And the thought of homelessness loomed over Maya like a dark cloud. Every night, the distant hum of construction crews echoed through the thin walls, a reminder that their time was running out. The bills stacked on the kitchen table told another story, the relentless medical expenses for Evelyn's care, the utilities, the groceries, all fast mounting beyond what Maya's part-time jobs could cover. By day, Maya juggled schoolwork with shifts at a local corner store and occasional babysitting gigs. The hours were long and the pay meager, but she pressed on, driven by hope that education was the only way out. Still, even with every spare moment filled, the numbers never quite added up. Rent was overdue, and the fear of losing the last thread of luck sparking stability gnawed at her. Some nights, she lay awake listening to Evelyn's coughs, feeling helpless against the tide of hardship. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her young shoulders. Not just the burden of survival, but the quiet determination to protect her grandmother's dignity and keep her dreams alive. Despite the exhaustion and mounting pressure, Maya refused to let despair consume her. Every time she caught her reflection in a cracked mirror, dark circles beneath tired eyes, lips pressed tight against fatigue, she reminded herself that this struggle was temporary. The future she envisioned was a world where Evelyn could rest easy, where they could live without fear of eviction, and where her voice, once silenced by circumstance, could finally be heard. But for now, the fight continued, between exhaustion and hope, poverty and ambition, and a young girl determined to carve out a better life against all odds. Outside the prestigious walls of Crestwood Academy, Maya Bennett's life was marked by quiet struggle and relentless responsibility. She lived in a small, cramped apartment on the Radinas one edge of the city with her grandmother, Evelyn, whose once strong frame had been worn thin by years of hard labor and the slow, merciless creep of illness. Every morning before dawn, Maya was already awake, the weight of the day pressing down on her young shoulders. She carefully organized Evelyn's medications into plastic pillboxes, her fingers steady despite the exhaustion that often clouded her mind. The apartment was cramped and worn, the faded wallpaper peeling at the corners, and the furniture threadbare from years of use. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic mixed with the stale remnants of old cooking, a constant reminder of the limited comforts they could afford. Evelyn shuffled slowly to the kitchen each morning, wrapped in a faded robe, her hands trembling as she reached for the toast Maya had prepared. Maya's voice was gentle but firm, reminding her grandmother to take her pills with food. The effort it took Evelyn to manage even these simple tasks was visible in every movement, the slow blink of tired eyes, the cautious steps across the scuffed floor. Maya often caught herself staring at her grandmother's fragile hands, veins like delicate blue threads beneath paper-thin skin, a silent testament to decades spent cleaning houses, caring for others, and now fighting illness with dwindling strength. The apartment they called home was no longer safe from the pressures of the outside world. A stark eviction notice had arrived just days earlier, its cold print promising an end to their sanctuary. The building was slated for demolition and conversion into luxury condominiums, a project that represented progress for some but devastation for Maya and Evelyn. 45 days remained before they would have to leave, and every passing moment brought them closer to homelessness. The landlord's voice over the phone was curt and unyielding. There was no room for negotiation. Maya folded the eviction notice over and over, the edges softening under her trembling fingers as anxiety gnawed at her every thought. With the looming threat of displacement, the mounting medical bills, and the everyday costs of survival, Maya found herself stretched thin. She worked multiple part-time jobs, shifts at a corner store, babysitting neighbors' children, even cleaning local offices late at night. Each dollar earned was carefully counted and allocated to rent, utilities, groceries, and medications. Yet no matter how hard she tried, it was never quite enough. Some days, she found herself lying awake, calculating expenses in her mind, wondering how to stretch a few cents further, or what bill could be postponed without serious consequence. The quiet fear of failure hovered constantly, a shadow she could neither escape nor confront openly. Despite her relentless schedule, exhaustion was a constant companion. Dark circles framed her eyes, her hands trembled from fatigue, and the stress tightened her chest like an unseen vice. But the deeper weight was the emotional burden, the desire to protect her grandmother from pain, to shield her from the harsh realities they faced. Maya carried this silent promise within her. No matter how difficult the road, she would not let Evelyn's sacrifices be in vain. Education was her beacon. A chance to rewrite their story, to build a future where they no longer feared eviction or medical bills. Yet in those rare, quiet moments when the city slept and the apartment was still, Maya allowed herself a flicker of vulnerability. She would gaze at her reflection in the cracked mirror, tired eyes, meeting tired eyes, and wonder if the dreams she chased were truly within reach. The weight of responsibility pressed hard, but so did hope, because in her heart, she knew this struggle was temporary. She was fighting not just for survival but for the chance to be heard, to be seen, and to break free from the invisible walls that confined her. Outside, the city moved on, busy, indifferent, and unyielding. But within that small, worn apartment, Maya Bennett nurtured a quiet resilience. Each day was a battle, but one she was determined to win. For Evelyn, for herself, and for the promise that one day, they would no longer live in fear of eviction, but in hope of opportunity. Outside the rigid walls of Crestwood Academy, Maya Bennett found a different kind of stage one, where her voice wasn't judged by the worn thread of her jacket or the faded marks of her past, but by the power and passion she poured into every word. At the local community center, the spotlight was hers to command, and the name Midnight Voice had become synonymous with raw truth and unyielding spirit. Here, in a crowded room thick with anticipation and the scent of fried food from nearby street vendors, Maya was no longer the scholarship kid overlooked and underestimated. She was a legend. The spoken word nights at the center were alive with energy, a place where stories spilled from hearts and souls into the ears of an eager audience. Maya's presence was magnetic, her movements fluid, her voice a symphony of rhythm and emotion that carried far beyond the worn walls. Before taking the microphone, she'd unwrap a stick of mint gum, the cool taste sharpening her focus, a ritual that grounded her in the moment. Clutching her mother's leather-bound notebook, filled with poems penned in delicate script and bold new verses of her own making, Maya stepped into the glow of the stage with quiet confidence. Each performance was a journey, a tapestry woven from threads of struggle, resilience, and hope. Through her poetry, Maya gave voice to the invisible barriers that shaped her world. The judgmental stares at school, the suffocating weight of poverty, and the fierce determination to rise above it all. She painted vivid pictures of nights spent caring for her ailing grandmother, of dreams deferred but never forgotten, and of the fire that refused to be extinguished. Her words hit like thunder, echoing through the room and stirring the hearts of their views, everyone listening. Unlike the sterile corridors of Crestwood, the community stage welcomed her authentic self. Here, applause erupted not out of obligation but from genuine connection. Hands clasped hers in gratitude. Strangers pulled her into embraces, recognizing the strength it took to bear one's soul so fearlessly. The audience saw beyond the surface, the worn shoes, the faded uniform, the hardships hidden behind tired eyes, and witnessed the fierce, unbreakable spirit of Midnight Voice. It was in this space that Maya's true identity blossomed. The dichotomy between the girl fighting for acceptance at Crestwood and the fearless artist commanding the stage blurred and began to merge. Each poem was more than words, it was a declaration that her story mattered, that her voice could not be silenced by poverty, prejudice, or doubt. Midnight Voice was not just a name, it was a movement, a beacon for those who felt unseen and unheard. This dual life fueled Maya's determination. When the world at school tried to cage her with narrow expectations and harsh judgments, she turned to the community stage to reclaim her power. The applause, the cheers, the shared moments of vulnerability became her refuge and her weapon. Through spoken word, she transformed pain into art, hardship into inspiration, and silence into a roar. In those moments under the spotlight, Maya Bennett wasn't just a student, she was a force. Midnight Voice. The voice of dreams forged in struggle, and destined to shatter every limit placed before her. The announcement of the Voices of Tomorrow competition sent ripples through Crestwood Academy, stirring a mix of excitement and tension that no student could ignore. With a $50,000 scholarship as the grand prize, the contest represented more than just a trophy. It was a lifeline, a chance for Maya Bennett to change the course of her and her grandmother's lives. That money could cover Evelyn's mounting medical bills, secure a safer place to live, and finally ease the crushing weight of financial uncertainty that hung over their tiny apartment. For Maya, the competition was more than a contest. It was hope wrapped in possibility. But hope was met with harsh skepticism by many in the Academy's privileged circles. Brandon Collins and his entourage greeted the news with thinly veiled disdain. "This is for real poets, not charity cases," Brandon sneered one afternoon, his voice dripping with condescension as he leaned toward his girlfriend, Sarah. Their friends snickered, eyes flicking toward Maya as she passed nearby, their laughter like knives, aimed to cut down any shred of confidence she might muster. To them, Maya was less a serious competitor and more a linepiece. Checkbox on a diversity form, a token presence meant to soften the contest's image rather than challenge its traditions. Rumors swirled through the halls, whispers suggesting Maya had only secured a spot because of quotas, not talent. Some students openly doubted her ability to compete against the polished, well-funded participants from affluent schools. "They'll never pick someone like her," a voice murmured in the cafeteria, eyes rolling with disbelief. Maya felt the sting of every word, each one reinforcing the invisible barriers she had fought so hard to overcome. Yet beneath the doubt and dismissive chatter, a quiet fire burned within her, a determination to prove that her voice was no mere formality, but a force to be reckoned with. At home, the eviction notice that had arrived days earlier seemed to mock her aspirations, the ticking clock of dwindling days pressing down with relentless urgency. Still, Maya clung to the possibility that the scholarship could be the key to a fresh start. The promise of Voices of Tomorrow was a rare beacon in a sea of hardship, a chance to rewrite her story and give her grandmother the peace and security she deserved. Despite the growing hostility at school, Maya found strength in the whispered encouragements of the community center and the growing support of Miss Diaz, the school librarian who saw through the fat of privilege and recognized true talent. Miss Diaz reminded her that the competition was designed to uplift voices like hers, voices that challenged the status quo and told stories others refused to hear. Yet, the path ahead was fraught with doubt and resistance, both external and internal. Every skeptical glance, every snide remark from Brandon and his clique became a challenge, a gauntlet. Maya was determined to run. The Voices of Tomorrow was more than a competition. It was a battleground where she would fight for dignity, recognition, and the chance to turn whispered hopes into roaring reality. And as the deadline loomed, Maya prepared to step forward, not as the charity case they expected, but as the true voice of tomorrow. As the days slipped by, The pressure on Maya Bennett mounted relentlessly, squeezing every ounce of strength she had left. At school, the subtle cruelty escalated into open sabotage. One morning, she found her backpack dumped unceremoniously into a bathroom stall, the pages of her mother's cherished notebook soaked and warped beyond repair. The familiar words, the poems she had poured her heart into, now smeared and bleeding ink, a painful symbol of how the world around her sought to erase not just her presence, but her very voice. Worse still, a crude message had been scrawled across her locker in bold black marker. Charity. Case. The label stung sharper than any insult, branding her as less than, as someone only allowed in because of quotas and pity, not talent or merit. These acts of hostility echoed through the halls, whispered conversations cutting off as she approached, sidelong glances filled with disdain. The cafeteria, once a place to gather strength, had become a battleground, where Maya navigated the cold stares and biting remarks, her subsidized lunch tray, a visible marker of difference among the sea of polished plates. Meanwhile, her part-time job hours were cut unexpectedly due to slow business, shrinking her already meager income, and tightening the noose of financial strain. Every dollar lost was a step closer to losing the roof over their heads. At home, the weight of responsibility pressed even heavier. Evelyn's health deteriorated rapidly. Her coughing grew more frequent and severe, the medicine causing dizziness that left her vulnerable and dependent. Maya found herself up at night, helping her grandmother to the sound bathroom, soothing her with gentle words while fighting back tears she refused to show. The eviction deadline loomed ever closer, its red stamp on the notice like a ticking clock counting down to displacement and uncertainty. The relentless demands of schoolwork, jobs, and caregiving began to take a toll on Maya's spirit. Sleepless nights blurred into exhausting days, her body aching from the strain and her mind weighed down by worry. Dark circles deepened under her eyes, her reflection in the graced, cracked mirror revealing a young woman fraying at the edges. More than once, she contemplated giving up, dropping out to work full-time, sacrificing her dreams for immediate survival. The thought haunted her in quiet moments, a whisper of surrender amid the storm. Yet beneath the exhaustion and despair, a fierce determination flickered. Maya knew the cost of giving up, not just for herself, but for Evelyn, for the sacrifices that had carried her this far. Each hardship was a test, a reminder that the path she walked was anything but easy. The voices of doubt and fear that threatened to drown her were met with the steadiness of hope, and the quiet promise that her story was worth fighting for. In the darkest moments, when the weight of the world seemed unbearable, Maya clung to the 6 to 9's belief that her voice, though battered and bruised, would rise above the noise. And so she pressed on, navigating a world that sought to break her, refusing to let the harshness of circumstance silence the dreams that burned within. Amid the swirling chaos of doubt and hardship, a beacon of hope appeared in the form of two Trace. Miss Diaz, the school's new librarian. Unlike many at Crestwood Academy who saw Maya Bennett as just another scholarship student struggling to fit in, Miss Diaz recognized something extraordinary beneath the surface, a raw, untamed talent, waiting to be shaped, unleashed. What Maya didn't know was that Miss Diaz carried her own story, a past as a 3-time regional slam poetry champion, a life spent battling silence and prejudice with nothing but words as her weapons. This shared experience forged an unspoken bond between them from the moment their paths crossed. Miss Diaz became more than just a librarian. She was a mentor, a coach, and a fierce advocate for Maya's potential. In the quiet, sunlit corners of the library, before school hours, she worked tirelessly with Maya to hone her voice, not just its tone or volume, but its power to command attention and evoke emotion. They practiced breathing techniques to harness the diaphragm, exercises to strengthen projection, and strategies to control stage presence. Miss Diaz understood that poetry was more than reciting words. It was a performance, a battle for the audience's hearts and minds. But the lessons went deeper than technique. Miss Diaz taught Maya the art of strategy and competition, the subtle but powerful tactic of luring an audience into complacency before striking with unexpected brilliance. Give them what they expect, Miss Diaz advised, her voice steady and encouraging. Let them believe you'll play it safe, fit neatly into their narrow definitions of acceptable. Then, when they least expect it, break free. Shatter their expectations and show them the real you. This approach wasn't just about winning a contest. It was a metaphor for life, a way to challenge the systems designed to keep voices like Maya's silent. With Miss Diaz's guidance, Maya began to see herself not as a victim of circumstance but as a force of change. The library became their training ground, a sanctuary where Maya could shed the weight of judgment and rediscover her identity as Midnight Voice. Miss Diaz's faith in her talent bolstered Maya's confidence, giving her the courage to embrace both her vulnerabilities and strengths. The mentorship extended beyond the words. It was about reclaiming agency, about standing tall in a world that often told her to stay small. As the competition deadline loomed, Maya felt the transformation within herself. No longer was she merely the scholarship kid struggling to survive. She was an artist ready to command the stage and tell her truth on her own terms. The lessons from Miss Diaz were clear. True power came not from meeting expectations, but from boldly rewriting them. And with that knowledge, Maya was prepared to face whatever challenges awaited, armed with the voice that was hers alone to wield. The day of the Voices of Tomorrow competition arrived, bringing with it a mixture of nerves, anticipation, and determination that Maya Bennett had never felt before. From the moment she stepped into the grand auditorium, the weight of the opportunity pressed heavily on her, but it was tempered by the countless hours of preparation with Miss Diaz and the fierce resolve that had carried her through every hardship. Each round tested her focus and resilience as she faced competitors from across the city, each bringing their own stories and styles to the stage. Maya moved through the preliminary rounds with a steady confidence, her voice clear and precise, earning her a coveted spot in the finals alongside Brandon Collins and a talented poet from East Side High named Darius. As the final round approached, the air crackled with tension. Brandon took the stage first, his polished, practiced performance, a display of technical skill and theatrical flair, designed to impress and command respect. The crowd responded enthusiastically, but Maya watched with quiet intensity, knowing that her moment was coming, and that it would be unlike anything they expected. When her name was called, Maya stepped forward with measured steps, the spotlight illuminating her face, calm but resolute. Gone was the nervous girl from the scholarship class. In her place stood Midnight Voice, carrying not just words but the weight of a story that demanded to be heard. Clutching her mother's worn notebook, she opened it to a page marked with years of love, loss, and unspoken dreams. With a breath, she began to speak. My mother wrote this poem the day before she died, Maya shared softly, her voice carrying across the silent hall. I've never shared it until now. What followed was a raw, powerful recital that wove pain and hope into a tapestry of truth. Her words resonated deeply, revealing the invisible struggles of those like her children of sacrifice and resilience, silenced by circumstance, but unbroken in spirit. She spoke of whispered limitations, of expectations designed to hold her back, and of a voice that refused to be quieted. Each line struck the audience with the force of a revelation, a challenge to the status quo that echoed beyond the walls of the auditorium. The room was still captivated and moved, until the final verse broke the silence like a wave. Slowly, then all at once, the crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Standing ovations rippled through the audience, some moved to tears, others inspired to cheer louder. Even her toughest critics were caught off guard, unable to deny the power and authenticity of Maya's performance. The judges, previously impassive, leaned forward, their pens momentarily forgotten. That night, Maya did more than win a competition, she shattered the preconceived notions of Ichaling, who belonged on that stage. Her mother's words, now her own, transformed a contest into a statement, a declaration that voices from every background, every struggle, have the power to change the world. As she stepped off the stage, the applause still ringing in her ears, Maya knew this was just the beginning of her journey, one where her voice, once a whisper, had become a roar impossible to ignore. When the judges finally announced the winner of the Voices of Tomorrow competition, the Forces auditorium erupted in a wave of sound that seemed to shake the very walls. Maya Bennett's name rang out clear and triumphant, carrying with it the weight of years of struggle, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. The $50,000 scholarship prize was more than a sum of money. It was a lifeline that promised to change not only her future, but also that of her grandmother, Evelyn, who had weathered countless hardships alongside her. As Maya stepped forward to accept the certificate, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders, but the pride shining in her eyes told a story far beyond victory. It was the story of a young woman who had refused to be silenced, who had transformed pain into poetry and marginalization into power. The impact of her win rippled far beyond the stage. For the first time, many of the students and faculty who had dismissed Maya as merely a scholarship case or a diversity quota contender were forced to reconsider their judgments. Brandon Collins, once so smug and confident, stood awkwardly at the side, his carefully maintained facade faltering under the wild, undeniable truth of her talent. The power dynamics at Crestwood Academy shifted visibly. The quiet girl, who had once moved through the halls unnoticed now, commanded attention and respect. Teachers who had been distant suddenly found reasons to engage, and peers who had whispered behind her back now offered nods of acknowledgement, some even genuine congratulations. The social landscape that had seemed so rigid and exclusionary was cracking. Outside the walls of Crestwood, Maya's story spread like wildfire. Clips of her final performance circulated widely on social media platforms, shared and reshared by thousands, who found inspiration in her words and courage. The hashtag number, Midnight Voice, trended alongside the official competition tags, a symbol of her newfound voice echoing far beyond her immediate community. National arts blogs and news outlets picked up the story, praising her for both her undeniable talent and the powerful message woven through her poetry. Maya was invited to perform at major cultural events, youth forums, and literary festivals, where her presence became a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. With the scholarship secured, Maya and Evelyn moved into a modest but stable apartment, closer to school and medical care. The money covered Evelyn's medical expenses, alleviating the crushing financial burden that had loomed over them for so long. But beyond the tangible benefits, the scholarship represented something more profound. The affirmation that Maya's dreams were valid, that her voice mattered, and that the world was finally beginning to listen. Miss Diaz, who had been a steadfast mentor throughout Maya's journey, smiled with quiet pride. She saw in Maya the same fierce spirit she once carried on her own path as a slam poetry champion. Their bond had transformed from teacher and student into a partnership of the secondum, shared vision and mutual respect. Together, they looked ahead to new projects, including Maya's leadership in a youth poetry program at the community center and discussions with publishers interested in her work. Maya's victory was not just a personal triumph, it was a catalyst for change, a challenge to the assumptions and biases that had sought to confine her. Her story became a rallying cry for those who had been overlooked or underestimated, proving that authenticity and resilience could break through even the most entrenched barriers. As Maya continued to write and perform, her voice carried the hopes of many, transforming the narrative from one of struggle to one of empowerment. In the quiet moments after the applause faded, Maya sat at her desk, pen in hand, surrounded by the worn pages of her mother's notebook and the new verses that flowed from her heart. The competition was over, but her journey had only just begun. With each word she wrote, Maya Bennett, once the scholarship kid, now a rising star, committed herself to using her voice to shatter walls, uplift others, and claim the future she had fought so hard to reach. With the scholarship money finally in hand, Maya Bennett and her grandmother Evelyn moved into a modest but comfortable new apartment, nestled closer to both the school and the medical facilities that Evelyn needed. The weight of eviction notices and unpaid bills that had once pressed heavily upon their lives began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism that felt almost foreign after years of uncertainty. For the first time in a long while, Maya could breathe a little easier, knowing that the crushing financial burdens no longer threatened to uproot their fragile stability. Medical treatments were no longer delayed or skipped, and Evelyn's health began to stabilize under the attentive care of specialists who listened and responded with compassion. Yet even as the tangible pressures eased, Maya's journey was far from over. The world that had once dismissed her was now watching, expecting more than just survival from the young poet they had come to know as Midnight Voice. Maya embraced this new chapter with determination, channeling her experiences and the strength she'd forged through adversity into her art. Writing remained her refuge and her weapon, each poem a declaration, each verse a step forward on a path she was still carving for herself. Her growing reputation as a spoken word artist opened doors to opportunities she had only dreamed of. Maya was invited to lead a youth poetry program at the very community center that had once been her sanctuary, now transformed into a vibrant hub of creativity and empowerment. Guiding young voices from similar backgrounds, she became a mentor, role model, passing on the lessons of resilience, authenticity, and the power of storytelling. Watching her students find their own voices reminded Maya of the importance of community, and the ripple effect one person's courage could create. At the same time, Maya's written work caught the attention of a respected independent publisher intrigued by the raw honesty and emotional depth of her poetry. Discussions began about compiling her verses into a collection, an opportunity to reach audiences beyond the stage and screen, to put her voice in print where it could endure and inspire. The prospect was thrilling and daunting in equal measure, but Maya met it with the same fierce resolve that had brought her this far. Despite the newfound recognition and shifting circumstances, Maya remained grounded by the memory of the struggles that shaped her. Her grandmother's quiet strength, the battles fought in cramped apartments and under harsh judgment, all remained vivid in her mind, fueling her commitment to authenticity. Each poem she wrote was a conversation across time, a dialogue with her mother's words, her own evolving voice, and the countless unheard stories of those around her. The transition to this new life also brought challenges balancing school, mentoring, writing, and the public attention that followed her victory was no small feat. Maya often found herself navigating moments of doubt, fatigue, and the weight of expectation. But she faced these with a quiet resilience, remembering the words Miss Diaz had once shared. That true power lies not just in talent, but in the courage to continue, to speak louder than the doubts, both external and internal. In the evenings, Maya could often be found at her desk, a blank page before her, pencil in hand, weaving together the threads of her past, present, and hopes for the future. The community around her was changing too. Once distant peers now greeted her with respect, the halls of Crestwood no longer echoing with whispers but with genuine acknowledgement. Though the path ahead was still uncertain, Maya Bennett was no longer just a girl trying to survive. She was a young artist shaping her destiny, determined to break barriers and inspire others to do the same. As the city's rhythm pulsed outside her window, Maya understood that this new chapter was not an end but a beginning. The scholarship had opened a door, but it was her voice. The voice forged through hardship, sharpened by experience, and emboldened by hope that would carry her forward. And with each poem, each mentorship, and each step she took, Maya Bennett continued to claim her rightful place in the world, not just as midnight voice, but as a force for change, growth, and limitless possibility. Maya Bennett's victory was never meant to be an endpoint, it was the beginning of a new chapter. A launchpad for a journey far greater than any single competition or prize. Through her triumph, she found not only recognition but her true voice, a voice powerful enough to break down invisible walls built by prejudice, doubt, and circumstance. Maya's story is a beacon for anyone who has ever felt underestimated, silenced, or confined by their background. It reminds us that our worth is not defined by others' expectations, but by the strength we find within ourselves to rise and be heard. Her journey inspires a call to all of us to believe fiercely in our own value, to challenge the limits placed upon us, and to break free from the barriers that hold us back. True victory lies not in the applause or accolades, but in the courage to keep moving forward, to use your voice even when the world tries to quiet it. Each of us carries a unique story and power that can transform not only our own lives but also inspire those around us. No matter where you come from, or what obstacles you face, your voice matters. Don't let fear or judgment silence your dreams. Step into your light, embrace your journey, and remember breaking boundaries is the first step toward change. If Maya's story moved you, inspire others by sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what barriers you've overcome, or what dreams you're ready to chase. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of resilience and triumph. Hit the 7.God like button if you believe in the power of authentic voices and join our community, because every voice deserves to be heard.